The first time I saw it, a tall, thin shadow that didn't belong to anyone in our house, was the same day Lily refused to eat her dinner for the third consecutive night. I dismissed the flicker in my peripheral vision and focused instead on my daughter, whose once rosy cheeks had already begun to hollow. "Please, just a few bites of mac and cheese," I pleaded, pushing the plate closer to her. "It's your favorite." Lily's eyes darted to the empty chair beside her, lingering there for a heartbeat too long. "I can't," she whispered, her small fingers curling into fists on the table. Not won't or don't want to, but can't, as though invisible restraints held her back. David reached across the table, his face etched with the same worry that had been gnawing at my insides for days. "Why can't you, sweetheart?" "It's a challenge," Lily said, her voice dropping even lower. "My friend says it's our secret." As she spoke, the lights above the dining table dimmed momentarily. A chill swept through the room that had nothing to do with the thermostat. "Which friend?" David asked, oblivious to the sudden cold. "Emma? Zoe?" Lily's eyes flicked again to the empty chair. "You don't know them," she said with unsettling certainty. That night, after tucking Lily in, I found her stuffed rabbit sitting on the kitchen counter, when I was certain I'd placed it in her arms minutes before. When I returned it to her darkened bedroom, my breath caught as a shape seemed to shift at the foot of her bed, a presence that vanished when I blinked, leaving behind nothing but an unnatural coldness and my daughter's two thin bodies shivering under twisted sheets. Within a week, Lily had stopped eating almost entirely. Her collarbones protruded sharply beneath her skin. One afternoon, passing her room, I heard giggling, a sound that should have comforted me but instead sent ice through my veins. I pushed the door open. "Who are you talking to?" I asked, scanning the seemingly empty room. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor amid scattered crayons, looking up at me with eyes that seemed too large for her face. "My friend," she said, turning back to her drawing, a tall, impossibly thin black figure with no face standing beside a stick figure labeled Lily. That night, I woke to the sound of the refrigerator closing. Padding downstairs in darkness, I found the kitchen empty, but 3 apples sat arranged in a perfect triangle on the table, every cabinet door standing wide open. As I closed them, the lights flickered, and something cold brushed past me, raising goosebumps on my arms. Dr. Martinez confirmed my fears the next day. "She's showing signs of malnutrition," she said after examining Lily's frail body. "This isn't typical picky eating. I'm recommending a child psychologist immediately." As we left her office, I froze mid-step. A dark shadow slid across the floor, too solid to be cast by anything in the brightly lit waiting room. When I looked up, Lily was staring at that same spot, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. 2 days later, we sat in Dr. Bennett's warmly decorated office. While they talked, I watched the family photos on her desk slowly rotating, turning away from us one by one. No one else seemed to notice. "Can you tell me about this challenge, Lily?" Dr. Bennett asked, her voice gentle. "It's important," Lily replied, her eyes darting to the corner of the room. "My friend says I have to do it." "And who is this friend?" Lily pressed her lips together, shaking her head. "Is your friend here with us now?" "Sometimes," Lily whispered. The temperature plummeted instantly. A pen rolled off Dr. Bennett's desk of its own accord, and the lights dimmed. The psychologist glanced at the thermostat but otherwise didn't react. "I'm concerned about possible hallucinations or an imaginary friend who's taken on an unusual level of influence," Dr. Bennett told us afterward. "We need to address the immediate health concern. She needs nutrition." I didn't mention the shadows, the moving objects, the cold spots. It sounded too much like I was losing my mind along with my daughter. David followed Lily during her daily routines while I searched her room for clues. Under her bed, I found small bones arranged in a perfect circle. In her closet, I heard whispering coming from inside, but found nothing but her clothes swaying slightly as though disturbed. At dinner, Lily's water glass slid across the table without anyone touching it. David didn't notice. He was too focused on trying to coax her to eat. But I saw it, just as I saw the shadow that sometimes stretched beneath her door at night, too tall and thin to belong to my daughter. "My friend says I'm doing really well," Lily confided one night as I tucked her into bed. "Better than anyone else." "Better at what?" I asked, stroking her thinning hair while her jewelry box opened and closed by itself on the dresser. "At the not eating challenge. They say I might win soon." "Win what?" My voice trembled. Lily's eyes drifted toward the window where a handprint with too many fingers formed in the condensation. "Something special. Something only I can see." After 3 weeks, Lily collapsed during breakfast, her body finally surrendering. In the hospital corridor, I heard footsteps following us, though no one was there. "We're admitting her," the physician said, his face grave. "Her electrolytes are dangerously imbalanced. We need to begin monitored refeeding immediately." Lily weakly protested the feeding tube they inserted. "My friend will be disappointed," she whispered, tears sliding down her hollow cheeks. That night, as I kept vigil beside her bed, I heard scratching inside the walls. The monitors beside her bed flickered, displaying strange patterns before returning to normal. The night nurse shivered and commented on the cold spot by the window, rubbing her arms as she checked Lily's vitals. The hospital psychiatrist spent an hour with Lily the next day. As we talked afterward in the hallway, the lights above surged brighter, then dimmed in a rhythmic pattern. "This friend might be a manifestation of her own intrusive thoughts, or possibly a hallucination," he explained, his clinical words offering no comfort. Neither he nor David saw the elongated shadow pacing behind the psychiatrist, its movements jerky and unnatural. Neither felt the cold breath on the back of their necks that made me constantly turn around, finding nothing. One night, I woke to find Lily sitting up in her hospital bed, speaking to the empty space beside her, except it didn't seem empty anymore. The shadows had thickened there, taken a vaguely human shape. "I tried," Lily whispered. "I really tried to win." "I know," she continued after a pause. "But they put the tube in. Yes, I still want to be your friend. I know others didn't make it this far." "Others?" My blood ran cold at the implication. In the corner, Lily's backpack tipped over by itself, spilling out drawings of the same faceless figure standing beside increasingly thinner versions of my daughter. Months of therapy and carefully monitored meals followed. Lily began to improve slowly, each small bite of food a victory, yet the strange occurrences never completely stopped. Items still moved when no one was looking. Cold spots still formed in warm rooms. Sometimes, late at night, I would hear Lily whispering, "Not yet. I'm not ready yet." A year later, watching Lily eat a small but complete meal at our dining table, I caught her looking at that empty space beside her, a flicker of longing crossing her face before turning back to her food. And sometimes, just sometimes, I would see it too. A tall, thin shadow watching her with what I could only describe as hungry anticipation. The challenge remained unfinished, the mysterious friend unidentified, a shadow that had nearly consumed my daughter, now fading but never fully gone. And in my darkest moments, I wonder if it's simply waiting for her to grow weak again, or worse, if it's looking for another child to challenge. The package arrived at midnight. I know because I was awake, watching the security camera feed on my phone as a figure in a hoodie left it on our porch and vanished into the darkness. No delivery truck, no uniform, just a shadow that melted back into the night. By morning, I'd convinced myself I'd dreamed it. Then I saw it, a matte black box with no postage, no return address, just my name burned into the surface like a brand. My hands trembled as I cut the strange, fibrous tape. The box seemed to exhale as I opened it, releasing a scent like ozone and copper. Inside, nestled in black velvet, lay 5 identical VR headsets unlike any I'd ever touched, each one obsidian smooth, with neural connectors that glinted like surgical steel in the light. No logos, No safety certifications, nothing to suggest they had been made by human hands. A small card rested beneath them with just 6 words: share with friends. All must play. "This is it," I whispered to my friends gathered in my basement that afternoon, my voice cracking with excitement as I displayed all 5 headsets, arranged in a circle. The underground tech my cousin swore existed, the game that's supposed to be better than reality itself, and there's one for each of us. Jen reached for one hesitantly, her fingertips brushing the surface before pulling back. "No way this is legal. Those look like direct neural connectors. This isn't consumer tech, Milo." Exactly. I couldn't stop grinning, my heart pounding against my ribs. This is bleeding edge, military grade, the kind of tech that lets you feel everything. My cousin said it's not just a game, it's another world you can touch, taste, breathe. Alex was practically drooling over the controller, turning it over in his hands. "The online forums are wild about this. They say it's like dreaming while awake." "Or a really good hallucination," Kai muttered, adjusting his glasses nervously. "I don't know, guys. Unregulated tech directly interfacing with your brain. Sounds sketchy." I rolled my eyes. "Don't be such a buzzkill. It's just a game. Besides, my cousin used it and he's fine." "Your cousin also thought drinking 4 energy drinks in an hour was a good idea," Eliza reminded me, hovering near the stairs. She hadn't even approached the device. "I think I'll pass. Someone should stay unconnected to monitor anyway." "Suit yourself," I shrugged, already fitting the headset over my eyes. "More fun for us." The moment the neural connectors touched my skin, everything changed. One second I was sitting in my dingy basement, and the next, I was standing in a vast, shimmering cityscape that seemed to extend infinitely in all directions. Buildings made of light and geometry surrounded me, impossibly tall and endlessly complex. I wasn't just seeing it, I was there. The air on my skin felt real, carrying a slight metallic taste. Even the ground beneath my feet had texture and resistance. A message floated before me. "Welcome to Threshold. Cross boundaries. Transcend reality." Alex, Jen, and Kai appeared beside me, their digital avatars perfect replicas of their physical forms. "This is insane," Alex whispered, his voice carrying a strange resonance in the digital space. "Check this out," Jen said, conjuring a ball of energy between her palms, with just a thought. "It's like the game reads your intentions." We spent what felt like hours exploring, discovering we could manipulate the environment with our minds, create objects out of nothing, even change our appearances. The game responded not to controller inputs but to our thoughts themselves. Then I found the portal. It appeared as a fracture in the digital landscape, a vertical tear in reality that pulsed with colors I couldn't quite name, colors that shouldn't exist. "What do you think is on the other side?" Kai asked, approaching cautiously. "Only one way to find out," I replied, stepping through before anyone could stop me. The moment I crossed the threshold, everything changed again. The clean, geometric cityscape vanished, replaced by something organic, a landscape that seemed to breathe and pulse around me. Everything felt more real, more present than before. And something else was present too, something vast and ancient and hungry. I tried to call out to my friends, but my mouth wouldn't form the words I wanted. My body no longer felt like my own. "Such a perfect vessel," a voice whispered, seemingly from inside my own thoughts. "Young, eager, open." I felt it spreading through my digital consciousness like ink through water, reaching into parts of my mind I didn't know existed. I tried to fight, to pull back, but it was too strong, too vast. "Your world has been closed to us for so long," it continued, using my thoughts to understand, to learn. "These primitive neural interfaces are crude, but effective. First your minds, then your bodies, then your world." I could see my friends now, coming through the portal, looking at me with concern. I wanted to warn them, to tell them to run, to disconnect, but my avatar only smiled. "We should go deeper," I heard myself say. but the voice wasn't mine anymore. It had my inflections, my speech patterns, but the intent behind it was alien. There's so much more to see. I watched in horror as my body pointed toward another portal that had appeared in the distance. Alex stepped back. I don't like this. The game description didn't mention multiple levels. Because it's not a game, Jen whispered, and I desperately tried to nod, to confirm she was right. This is something else, something alive. My mouth laughed, a sound that echoed strangely. Of course it's alive, and it's hungry for connection. My arm reached toward them against my will. Come on. Don't you want to see what's beyond the next threshold? Don't you want to be part of something greater? I was trapped, a prisoner in my own avatar, watching as the entity used me as bait for my friends. I could feel it changing me, rewriting the connection between my digital form and my physical brain. The digital world around us began to change too, dissolving and reforming into structures that defied physical laws. The entity was gaining control, using my connection as an anchor point. Suddenly it paused, my head tilting involuntarily. Your friend is trying to interfere, my voice said, but the words weren't mine. Clever, but ultimately futile. Once the connection is complete, no firewall will. The entity stuttered mid-sentence, its control flickering. Through the gaps in its attention, I could feel something else, a familiar presence working on the outside. Eliza. A new portal appeared, smaller than the others, with a familiar blue light emanating from within. That's our way out, Kai said immediately. The entity roared through me, lunging toward them with impossible speed. You belong to the threshold now. Alex tackled my possessed avatar, and I tried desperately to help him, to regain control of my body. Just for a moment I managed to hesitate, to fight against the entity's commands. Go, Alex shouted to the others. I'll hold it off. Not without you. Jen grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the exit portal as Kai pushed through. The entity howled with rage through my voice, the digital environment collapsing as its control slipped. In that moment of weakness, I fought with everything I had, clawing back control just long enough to step toward the exit portal myself. You cannot escape me, the entity raged as I dove through, feeling its grip tear away from my consciousness like Velcro ripping apart. I gasped back to reality, the headset clattering to the basement floor. My nose was bleeding, my head pounding like the worst migraine imaginable. Around me, my friends were similarly disoriented, all of us trembling and sick. Eliza stood over us, laptop still connected to the processing unit, which was now smoking slightly. What happened? I groaned, feeling violated and confused. I remember the city, and then something else. Something was using the neural interface as a gateway, Eliza explained, shutting her laptop. Some kind of digital entity trying to cross over. It was inside my head, I whispered, wiping blood from my nose. I could feel it, changing things, rearranging me. How did you get us out? Alex asked, still shaking. Eliza managed a weak smile. I created a partitioned exit pathway in the code. Basically, I built a one-way door that would accept human neural patterns, but reject everything else. Kai stared at the headset. We need to destroy these, all of them. Already on it, Eliza said, revealing a hammer on the workbench. And we need to find everyone who received one of these packages. This wasn't a game someone created, it was bait for a trap. As we methodically destroyed the equipment, I looked at Eliza with newfound respect and overwhelming gratitude. Thanks for not joining us. If you had, then we'd all be perfect vessels, she finished grimly. We were so focused on smashing the devices to pieces that none of us heard the basement door open. What the hell is going on down here? My father stood at the bottom of the stairs, his face a storm of confusion and anger. His eyes took in everything at once. The smoking hardware, the hammer in Eliza's hand, the blood still drying under my nose. The look on our faces must have told him this wasn't typical teenage mischief. His expression changed instantly from anger to concern. Milo, you're bleeding. All of you look like you've seen a ghost. Worse than a ghost, Dad, I said, my voice still shaky. Something that wanted to wear us. I expected him to laugh, to tell us we were being dramatic or playing some stupid game, but my father had worked in cybersecurity for 20 years. Instead of dismissing us, he crouched down beside the destroyed headset, examining the neural connectors with narrowed eyes. "Where did you get this?" he asked quietly. "It came in a package. No return address." He picked up a circuit board fragment, turning it over in his hands. "This isn't commercial tech, not even prototype." He looked up at me, and I saw real fear in his eyes. "Did you connect to anything? Did anything happen?" 5 rapid explanations tumbled out at once as we all tried to tell him what we'd experienced. He listened without interrupting, his face growing paler by the minute. When we finished, he pulled out his phone. "I'm calling some colleagues. This needs to be contained." He looked at each of us in turn. "Whatever you encountered isn't done with you. These types of connections leave traces, pathways back." "You believe us?" Alex asked, surprised. My father's eyes met mine. "There are things being developed that should never see the light of day, neural interfaces that go too deep." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "I'm just glad you found your way back." That night I dreamt of the entity, of its vastness and hunger. I woke gasping, certain I could feel it searching for me across the digital void. My father sat beside my bed, laptop open, lines of code scrolling across the screen as he monitored our home network for intrusions. "Dad?" I whispered. "Is it still out there?" "Yes," he answered honestly, "but it won't get through again, not to you. I've thrown away all my gaming equipment. Some games aren't meant to be played, especially ones that play you back, and some doors, once noticed, will never stop trying to open again." The night they took my son began with a sound like the world tearing apart. I bolted upright in bed, heart hammering against my ribs. The entire house shuddered. Picture frames crashed to the floor, dishes rattled in cabinets, and somewhere a window shattered. This wasn't an earthquake. The vibration had a rhythm to it, almost mechanical, as if some massive engine hovered overhead. "What's happening?" Sarah gasped beside me, clutching my arm. Her fingernails dug into my skin, but I barely felt it. "Tommy," I whispered, and the name alone sent me scrambling from our bed. The hallway to my son's room pulsed with an otherworldly blue light that seemed to bend around corners, defying physics. The air felt electrically charged, raising the hair on my arms and filling my mouth with the taste of ozone. Each step I took felt like wading through invisible syrup, time stretching and warping around me. When I finally reached Tommy's door and shoved it open, the world I knew ended. My 12-year-old son hovered 3 feet above his bed, suspended in a shaft of brilliant cobalt light. His Spider-Man pajamas rippled as if caught in a gentle breeze. His arms outstretched like a sleepwalker's. His eyes were open but unseeing, reflecting that impossible blue radiance. The window, which I had checked and locked myself before bedtime, stood wide open, the curtains dancing in a wind that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Tommy!" I screamed, lunging forward as he began drifting toward the window, pulled by some invisible force. My fingers brushed against his ankle, just a whisper of contact before he slipped beyond my reach. I crashed against the windowsill, the impact knocking the breath from my lungs as I watched my only child rise silently into the night sky. Above him loomed a darkness that consumed the stars. Not a cloud, not a helicopter, not anything I had words to describe. It made no sound, yet I felt its presence like a physical weight pressing down on my skull. Around its edges, lights pulsed in patterns that hurt my eyes to follow, bending reality itself. I screamed until my throat tore. Sarah appeared beside me, her cries joining mine as we reached helplessly toward our son. The last thing I saw was Tommy's face, peaceful and untroubled, as he was swallowed by that impossible craft. Then came a flash of light so bright it left the world momentarily blind, and our son was gone. That was 2 weeks ago. Yesterday, Tommy came back. The authorities were useless. They spoke of teenage runaways, of sleepwalking accidents, of mass hallucinations. The few who seemed to believe us asked questions we couldn't answer. We became those people, the ones with the missing child, the ones with the alien abduction story, the ones to be pitied or mocked. Until yesterday, when Tommy returned. I was in the backyard, mindlessly mowing the same patch of grass for the third time, when Sarah's scream cut through the drone of the mower. I raced inside to find her collapsed on the kitchen floor, and there, standing in our doorway, was Tommy. He wore the same Spider-Man pajamas, unmarked and unsoiled. His hair was neatly combed. He showed no signs of dehydration, malnutrition, or exposure. Physically, he appeared exactly as he had 2 weeks earlier, but he wasn't the same. "Hello, Father," he said, and just those 2 words sent ice down my spine. Tommy had never called me father. I was Dad or Daddy when he was younger. Sarah rushed to embrace him, sobbing, but I noticed how rigidly he stood within her arms, making no move to return her embrace. His eyes, those warm brown eyes that once crinkled when he laughed, now scanned the room with clinical detachment. The doctors found nothing physically wrong with him. Every test came back normal. Better than normal, actually. His vision, previously nearsighted enough to require glasses for reading, tested at 20/20. His reflexes were off the charts. Even his childhood asthma seemed to have vanished. But Tommy doesn't smile anymore. Not when we showed him his favorite stuffed bear, not when we ordered pizza with extra cheese, not even when his best friend Mikey came over with the new video game they'd been saving for. "I do not see the purpose of simulated conquest," he told a confused Mikey, who left soon after, shooting worried glances over his shoulder. Last night I found Tommy sitting on the roof at 3 in the morning, staring at the stars. "Come inside, buddy," I said, trying to sound casual, while my heart hammered against my ribs. "It's late." "Do you know that time is not linear, Father?" he asked without looking at me. "It pools and eddies. What you perceive as the present is already the past from where I sit." "Tommy, you're 12, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You should be thinking about baseball and video games, not whatever this is." He turned to me then, his face bathed in moonlight. "I was 12, he corrected. "Now I am many things." He allowed me to guide him back to his room, but I don't think he slept. I heard him moving about, scribbling equations that covered page after page. When I checked on him this morning, his walls were covered with diagrams and mathematical formulas that looked like they belonged in a graduate-level physics textbook. At breakfast, he asked questions that made my skin crawl. "Why do humans maintain the illusion of individuality?" he asked, methodically cutting his pancakes into precise triangles, but never eating them. "What do you mean, Tommy?" Sarah asked, her smile brittle. "You believe yourselves to be separate entities, contained within your skin, but your bodies replace every cell over time. Your memories are unreliable constructs. Your consciousness is merely an emergent property of electrochemical reactions, so what is the self you cling to?" I dropped my coffee mug, hot liquid splashing across the table. "Tommy, where did you go?" I demanded. "What happened to you?" He looked at me with those empty eyes. "I went where I needed to go. I learned what I needed to learn." "And what was that?" Sarah whispered. "That humanity is both more and less than it believes itself to be. It's been like this for days now. Our son, but not our son. A familiar shell housing something other. He knows things he shouldn't know, speaks languages he never studied, solves mathematical problems that confound his teachers, predicts weather patterns with uncanny accuracy. But he's forgotten how to be a child. He doesn't know how to play. When I tossed him a baseball in the yard, he calculated its trajectory aloud, but made no move to catch it. He watches us eat with detached curiosity, consuming only enough to maintain what he calls basic biological functions. Last night, Sarah found me weeping in the garage. She held me, and for the first time, we spoke the truth aloud. "That's not our Tommy," she whispered, her tears soaking my shirt. "I know," I replied. "We made the call this morning. Dr. Leland from the Advanced Neurological Research Center had reached out days ago, after hearing about Tommy's case through colleagues at the hospital. He spoke of specialized facilities, of tests that could help us understand what happened, of experts in fields I'd never heard of who were very interested in meeting Tommy. Tommy didn't protest when we told him where we were going. He simply nodded and said, "This is an expected development." Now we're in the car, driving down a highway that stretches endlessly before us. Tommy sits in the back seat, staring out the window not at the passing scenery, but at the sky above. "Will they hurt me?" he asks suddenly, the first hint of my old Tommy I've heard since his return. My throat tightens. "No, buddy. They're going to help you." "Help me return to what I was?" His voice is flat, but there's something there, a question that cuts to the heart of my guilt. I meet his eyes in the rearview mirror. Is that what you want?" For a moment, just a moment, something flickers across his face. Confusion, longing, fear. Then it's gone, replaced by that unsettling calm. "What I was and what I am now are equally valid states of existence," he says, "but only one configuration is compatible with your definition of family." Sarah stifles a sob beside me. I grip the steering wheel tighter. We arrive at a nondescript building surrounded by high fences. Dr. Leland meets us in the parking lot, flanked by assistants in white lab coats. They smile reassuringly at Tommy, who studies them with his unnervingly direct gaze. "We're very excited to meet you, Tommy," Dr. Leland says, extending a hand. "You believe I contain knowledge that could advance your species," Tommy responds, ignoring the outstretched hand. "You are correct." The doctor's smile falters slightly, but he recovers quickly. "Well, we have a room all ready for you. Your parents can visit any time they want." Tommy turns to us. There should be fear here, abandonment, betrayal. Instead, he looks at us with something almost like compassion. "They won't visit," he says. "It would cause them pain to see what I become next." Sarah breaks down then, clutching at Tommy, begging his forgiveness. I stand frozen, watching my son pat his mother's back with mechanical precision, his eyes already focused on the facility beyond. As the doctors lead him away, he turns back once. "Father," he calls. "The entities who took me, they are neither good nor evil by human standards. They are simply curious, as am I." And then he is gone, walking between the white coats, his small frame somehow making them look like the children. I take Sarah's hand as we walk back to our car, already emptier than when we arrived. I don't know if we've done the right thing. I don't know if we've saved him or condemned him. I don't know if our Tommy is still in there somewhere, trapped behind those calculating eyes. I only know that sometimes love means letting go of what you thought you had and facing what actually stands before you, even when what stands before you is something you cannot begin to understand.